So where does AI fit in modern product design workflow? Does AI simply replace the product designer? Do you even need one anymore? You could just stop hiring product designers. Well, the answer is a lot more nuanced than you might think. In today's video, I'm going to show you a redesign exercise for an enterprise app and show you where AI does really well, where it falls short, how you can use AI to be a force multiplier in your work. If you haven't met me before, I'm Dennis Lisak. I've got 15 years of experience working on primarily enterprise complex tools that people use at work. So enterprise software has a reputation for being slow, cluttered, and full of unnecessary clicks. But is software actually the problem, or is it the design process? Today, I'm using Claude as my design co-pilot to redesign a real enterprise workflow from scratch. So let's begin. Let's look at some instructions. So Ground Level is the company and is a B2B SaaS platform for independent equipment rentals shops. So businesses that rent construction and landscaping equipment. The typical staff has 4 to 12 people. They manage anywhere from 50 to 200 pieces of equipment and process 15 to 40 returns per day at peak. So they have about average 60 pieces per equipment per shop. The returns processed a day is 20 to 40, and they're losing 3 to 8% of revenue when damages go undocumented. And the returns involve a damage dispute of about 4 to 6%. So here are the users. You got the counter staff and the yard crew. So the counter staff, they're at a desktop browser, full monitor, customer standing at the counter waiting. The primary job is to log the return, monitor inspection status, finalize billing, process deposit release, or damage charge. They cannot close the billing until the yard crew inspection is complete and creates a queue and an awkward wait with the customer. So they don't have a lot of tech comfort. It's also a very high turnover role. So for the yard crew, they're doing the equipment inspection. So they're using a phone or a tablet. They're often outside in direct sunlight. They may have gloves on and only one hand free. Their primary job is to walk around the equipment, note damage or missing parts, photograph issues, mark inspection complete. Their pain is the current system is unusable outside. They have to default to paper, which causes the billing backlog at the counter. You don't want the customer waiting 45, 50 minutes just to get this inspection part done so they can move on with the rest of their day. Their tech comfort is really low. They have a restraint to new tools unless they're fast and require minimal tapping. So the current workflow, customer arrives, the counter staff pull up the reservation, confirm the equipment serial number, log a return, initiated status. This takes 2 to 4 minutes. The yard crew does the inspection. The yard crew member walks the equipment with a paper checklist, fuel level, visible damage, missing attachments, hours on meter, photos taken on a personal phone. That takes 5 to 15 minutes. Then there's a paperwork handoff. The yard crew returns the checklist to the counter. Then that person needs to take all of that paperwork data into the system so that they can finish the order. So the counter reconciles, manually enters the damage notes, reviews the photos, and then step 5 is the billing closes, the invoice is finalized, and the deposit is released. So additional context is it takes average time to billing close is 35 to 55 minutes. The industry benchmark for well-run shops is under 15. So we got to fix this problem, and design is a great use of design to help them repair this. So what users are saying, by the time the yard guys come back with their notes, the customer's been waiting 45 minutes. They're really annoyed. Then I have to tell them there's a damage charge. It's just a bad conversation. For the yard crew, I'm not going to stand in the sun trying to type notes into a phone. That's what the clipboard is for. For the shop owners, we lost a dispute last month because we couldn't prove the damaged photo was taken. Customer said it was pre-existing. So what to design? We want to redesign the return and inspection experience. From the moment a customer arrives to the inspection to billing close, we're going to design 4 total screens. So the first one is a return in progress. So the customer's arrived, the return is logged, inspection is underway, counter staff is waiting on a yard crew and managing the customer. Billing close, inspection is complete, counter staff reviews the findings and applies or waives damages and finalizes the invoice. For the yard crew, this is a mobile application. They're doing an active inspection. Yard crew is walking the equipment, fuel levels, hours on meters, condition checklist. And lastly, the damage documentation is an edge case. So I'm going to choose one, a disputed damage claim, a partial return, multiple items on one reservation, after hours drop off, or scenario. And so we're going to choose a specific edge case based on what we think we know about the customer and how we might apply it to a redesign. So in terms of fidelity, we're not looking to do high fidelity, only unless that's absolutely necessary. We're going to try to get through what works best. And we're allowed to use any AI tool that we want. We want 3 deliverables. We want problem framing, 4 annotated screens, and then the AI session documentation, right? It's not useful if our audience doesn't know what decisions we made versus what decisions AI made. So we need to show all of that work. So with that being said, let's move on to framing. So what I did in this scenario was I had used AI to develop this design exercise. That was ChatGPT. And so all of this content with some edits was delivered through AI as an assist. Then I fed that AI back into ChatGPT and then asked it to develop a prompt that I could feed into, in this case, Lovable, to come up with the layout for all of this framing. So I didn't painstakingly design every one of these screens. I used AI to assist me, and I was able to go from the design exercise description to a full deck of framing in about 15 minutes. So let's just walk through the framing quickly. So we're going to do a return and inspection redesign. The idea is we want to reduce inspection to billing time while improving damage recovery documentation. Those are the 2 things we noticed in the design exercise. So the guiding principles is we want to only document this damage or the return of the equipment once. Progress should be very visible, and then evidence over notes. So photos, timestamps, and inspection history outweigh written descriptions. So key assumptions, what we believe to be true and will design against. So yard crews are not resist typing, but not technology. Largest opportunity is reducing information latency. Mobile phones are already part of the workflow, meaning they have them already, so there's no need to purchase this equipment for the business to purchase the equipment for their yard crew. Yard crew already has a mobile phone, so let's make something that any mobile phone can use, user can use easily. The last is damage disputes require historical evidence. So what can we do to improve the historical evidence that we're presenting to the customer? So the design priorities, what we're going to optimize for in order. So faster billing, better evidence, mobile first inspections, real-time visibility, and less customer friction. So in today's workflow, there's 3 actors, 1 paper form and a lot of waiting. So you got the counter staff waiting for the inspection. They receive this paper form. They re-enter it into billing. The yard crew is writing paper notes. They're walking paper to the counter. The customer is waiting, wait them more, and then wait again. The future workflow, 1 system, 1 source of truth, no paper. Customer arrives, inspection begins, live updates to the counter staff, evidence is captured, billing is ready, customer leaves, and we can shrink their wait time hopefully down to no more than 15 minutes each time. So things I deliberately left out, I wanted to focus on the high impact bottleneck first. So nothing to do with the rental checkout workflow, that's out of scope, fleet management, AI damage detection, or the customer facing experience. So probably the most important thing is, what are we going to measure? So we talked about this earlier, but we want to reduce the billing time, and reduce in this case by 45%. So we want the inspection completion to be no more than 8.2 minutes. We want that to go down. Now we want the damage dispute win rate to go up. We want photo documentation to increase by 94%. Now we also, most importantly, want to recover revenue, and then we want to reduce that customer wait time. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff of designing some screens using AI to help us with that. And I just want to give you a little bit of context. We have the instructions, we have the framing, and then we have the screens. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is develop a prompt. So in my case, I took the framing, the instructions, fed that back into ChatGPT, and asked ChatGPT to give me a prompt that I could then use in Claude, and that's what this came up with. And before I get too deep into the prompt itself, I do want to share that I'm using a design system. It's called Shad CN UI. And so this is a free design system. You can get this Figma file. You can see it already has a complete semantic token layout. So all the variables are set. And from here, you could, of course, adjust all of these to a particular brand's liking. But the point is, I've given all of this context from Figma MCP into Claude already. So when I reference this in the prompt, you can see that it has an understanding of this component library. So it's got hover cards, inputs. You can just see it has a completely built out design system. So we're not asking Claude to just come up with its own system on its own. And that will make all of this way easier as we think about how it can produce screens for us. So I didn't go through any edits of the existing design system, just took that out of the box, gave it its context, so it has all of these constraints already. And that's why you're seeing some language in here about the design system itself. So then the rest of this prompt is going through the current workflow, key bottlenecks, the instructions on what it should produce in terms of the types of screens it should produce, some layout structures or primary actions, trade-offs that should be considered, and then mostly, again, about the token usage, mobile considerations. So I've just fed this entire list of context, everything from the design system to the design exercise and challenge itself, and asking it to produce some screens. So the first screen you can see here is this return in progress, which is what the exercise was about. And then screen 2 for billing close. And lastly, for mobile, both the inspection screen and then the disputed damage edge case. So now we have draft 1 of what Claude was able to produce for this exercise. Now, as you start to look at this screen yourself, I'm sure you're already starting to think, is this the right layout? Is this the right way to think about how the customer might approach their work? And hopefully that is what you're doing. And that's exactly what I started to see was some things that I didn't like about all of this. So I, for example, could see a Trello board design pattern potentially being useful here. This badge, for as one other point of note, they've been waiting 18 minutes. The inspection is 75% complete. Like, is that attached to this one? You have to almost look to see, oh yeah, that badge is attached to this particular active return, but there are other active returns in the queue, and this can get pretty confusing. We're not really sure as we look at this layout that this is in fact the active return that we're viewing versus the other ones in the list. Why is the list on the right, not on the left? So there's probably a lot of work, but the bones are good here, right? There's some good bones that AI did. It saved us a ton of effort. The one thing that can really slow down product design in the iteration mode is just coming up with all the fake data. So it already has scissor lift and cat extractor, and then denoting that there's 4 of these. They've got badges with different statuses, this 3/4 full fuel level, the hour meter, just not having to do any of that work. That part is great. And now I can just concentrate on, okay, what about this design could be improved? And then the other great part, of course, is it came up with this within 15 minutes. So you're saving a ton of time. And now we can do some critical thinking rather than just the busy work of making the mock look like a mock. The list of active returns should be on the left. I'm thinking about a common design pattern for email inbox. So if I'm thinking about the fact that these counter staff are high turnover, they've got a low comfort with technology, but they probably have seen an email inbox before and can immediately intuitively understand that particular layout and kind of what it means. So, just some things that immediately came to mind as I started looking at this design. The second is the billing close. So here, you've got a button for finalize the invoice. You can waive all charges. So again, what I'm seeing here, what's nice is all of the fake data is already in here. We've got this area here to show the photos from the yard crew inspection here. It's giving some data on when it was captured and location and maybe some severity rating. But this is good bones. It's nice that I didn't have to go through and come up with all this fake data to make it into a mock. I've got a mock here that I can use. Now, one thing that I was thinking about critically is this idea of a damage and photographing that damage that exists. So if you want to do remediation, you probably need to compare when it was last checked in and then delivered to this customer, and now they're checking it in. Do those photos on the previous inspection show damage, yes or no? And now it's given to this new customer, they've returned it, and now all of a sudden it has damage. So I think that would provide more conclusive proof that there was in fact damage during this particular rental period. So that's one thing I was just immediately thinking about, rather than the particular design or visual polish that this may need before it would go out into production. So onto the mobile screens. So this is the active inspection. You can see that AI has taken the idea of this person may only have one hand free. They're out in the sunlight, so these buttons need to be fairly big. It's potentially a one-handed operation. So those are things that I really liked about this. But then I found a bunch of things that were really confusing. So in order to reduce revenue damage, the art crew should take photos of the entire unit each time. So in this case, it's saying it's, if there's no damage, you should just continue. But that, I think, prevents this opportunity to take photos of the entire piece of equipment every single time, so that you have this nice chain. I don't call it chain of custody, but this chain of no breakage, no damage. So if the business has a practice of taking photos of the entire piece of equipment every single time, you have this nice historical list of whether something was damaged or not. So outside of the UI not looking awesome, there are some other things here that I just thought were awfully confusing. So, there should just be one button here called next, right? Rather than no damage, continue, or document damage, right? It's just, when I look at these button choices, first of all, I'm not sure why I'm getting two. Why is this one red necessarily? Because that shows me there's some kind of error. And then second is just, I want a nice clean next button, right? So I don't have to think, which button am I choosing? Where am I going next? Right? I want a very clear idea of where am I in the process and what should I do next, with one primary CTA. So just having two buttons here is awfully confusing, even though one is primary and the other one's not. But again, this is red, indicating some kind of error. It's not really what's going on here. It's just indicating that there might be damage to that particular area. And then this whole thing, inspect photos and submit. Like, I don't know if those are buttons. I'm not sure what these buttons are even doing here. So these are all things that I feel could be cleaned up to make the next draft even easier. So in this last one, the AI is taking an assumption that they want, we're first of all going to have two things that the art crew is going to do is, one, just make a decision that there's damage, right? And then from there, somehow figure out what the severity of that damage might be. And I don't think the art crew people should be trying to figure that out, right? They should just have a very simple job of taking photographs and then denoting if anything has damage at all. So it's really like one decision. Take photo, damage, yes, no, and that's it. And then this last one here saying, okay, well, you want to submit a flag for the counter review. And that's again not really what we want the yard crew thinking about. The yard crew should just be thinking, I'm here to take photos. I am here to just do the work of figuring out if there's any damage here or not, take photos, and then I'm done. And let the counter staff handle the nuances of dealing with the customer and providing proof. So this entire process, I think, needs to be fixed. So that's what I'm doing here is then saying, oh, okay, Claude, let's change up the prompts. For the counter screens, I want to look at some different layout options. So the first option I want you to look at, and mind you, we're bumping back to the desktop screens. And so for this counter screens, how might I thought Trello board design pattern might be a good one. And so here's what it gave me as far as output. again, this takes almost no time. They're able to lay this thing out. In addition to that, they're able to give me some pros and cons of this Kanban style versus other kind of styles. So, one thing that this won't do in a Trello board scenario, right, is the user can just move these cards from one column or swim lane to the next. Now, in this setting, you don't want that, right? You want, if they're waiting, that it stays in that column, and then the system itself would move it into inspecting, into ready to bill, and close for today. So I wanted to see this, right, because the thing about design, from my perspective, is, and for those people that were also engaging in this design process, seeing is believing, right? You want to be able to look at this, compare it to this other design, that's listed over here, and start drawing some conclusions about which layout option might be the right one for the particular job in hand. So I liked that I got this particular visual, but I can't really compare it that well to the others. So then I asked Claude, hey, for the counter screen, show me at least 2 other design patterns in addition to the first 2 you show me, and that helped me choose the best model. So now we're back to a master on the left and a detail on the right. Pattern B, which is this Kanban style. Pattern C, which in this case is like a chronological event feed, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then this last one is more of a queue, and with these pills, so that in theory, the user could say, oh gosh, this person, Taurus, has been waiting, a while, let's go click on that one. So it's really just shifting the list view from, let's say, the right or the left side to the top, and then allows the user, almost like a filter mechanism, to just see all the ones that are currently in the queue. So now we can start looking at, okay, what style of format is probably the best, and have Claude give some strengths and weaknesses of each style. So you can see that Claude has done that. It's given some strengths, it's given some weaknesses, and then I'm using my own intuition with my years of experience to think through, okay, what is probably the best one? And so this model seems to be the most familiar to users. Email inbox, potentially requiring the least amount of training. So one thing that's really important to me in my thinking is this user should come to this interface and immediately know what to do. Like, there shouldn't be any real training required to start the job, be able to hand this case off to another worker. If they're having a high turnover, that is really a bonus, that they don't have to shadow somebody for a couple days to kind of get a feel for just the UI. Maybe how to handle customers well, but the UI should be something that they can understand right away. So, I'm glad I explored this Kanban Trello board approach. It's probably overkill for the complexity that is presented here. I just wanted to see the layout, but it does fall apart, pretty quickly when, it's only a 3-stage process. For Kanban to really have, for it to be more useful, you probably want, 4 and 5 or 6 stages that these things might be slotted into. With just 3, it just seems like Kanban is just not the right fit. I found this one interesting, the idea that it would list things in chronological order, but then this assumes that things are handled in chronological order. So meaning, I assume certain pieces of equipment come in that are more complex, that may take longer. There may be other holdups with the yard crew. So these things could come, may start in a chronological order, but they may not finish in a chronological order. So now we're asking the user to, look at a UI that is permanently affixing or organizing and ranking these in the order based on time. And that may not necessarily be the reality that these particular claims are handled. So this model, I think, falls apart pretty quickly. This one here, as we talked about earlier, the pill style, it's again almost a different version of the email inbox. I'm not sure it's more useful, and these pills won't scale. So if we decide down the road that we want to put more preview information, so again, the way I think about a list is you only put items in here that help the user discern, have enough information to help the user discern one from the other, right? So now we're saying, okay, well, all we need is the person's last name and the amount of time that they've been waiting. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. We don't know. Like, until we get this out in front of users, we may find that that's not useful, right? They may not index on the person's name. They may index, let's say, on the equipment. They may index on some other data factor. And then this pill, if you want to put a third item in here, starts to just, it becomes, there's too much content you're trying to stuff inside of a pill, and then the pill design itself doesn't scale, and now we've chosen a format that's ultimately just not going to scale well. It's not going to work. So again, what's great about AI is it did all of this like in 15 minutes, right? Like, I give it a prompt, it's a boom, 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 boom. It gives me these layouts, it gives me its thinking, and then I can go in and use my expertise to say, hey, which model is the most appropriate, without having to take my time to go through the busy work of developing all these mocks with all this fake data. So that's a great use of AI, but the thinking here is what's the most important part. And so that's why I'm calling AI a force multiplier, right? So now my resources can be used quickly across many more projects than having to tell my team, I need more time to go and develop these fake layouts and use this fake data, or try to connect to the real data, all this kind of thing, right? So if we just want to get our head around, okay, what layout option is right in the ideation phase, AI can do this very quickly, not necessarily do it extremely well in all cases, but just save the busy work time that you would needlessly spend before. So now moving down to the mobile screens. So then I said, hey, here's all of this context, meaning these notes from before about what the YAR crew really should be doing. Should the YAR crew be assessing the severity of damage? Should they be, taking photos or not taking photos? No, they should just be taking photos, assessing damage, and then allow them to move on. In addition to that, making it really clear where they are in the process, and this very clear CTA of what's next. So for the most part, AI got all of that right. So now we've got screens that, hey, you're going to enter the fuel, enter the hours, you're going to enter the condition. You've got buttons that are obviously sized correctly for the users. There's very easy to follow. There's not a lot of thinking, no training required here. You want to enter the fuel, you want to enter the hours. You've got a nice big next button. And now then you want to do like a condition check. And so the condition check screen, this is again where AI did a great job of being fast, putting in some interesting visuals, right? Like, again, for me to mock all this up would just take so much time, but there's just a whole bunch of stuff here that is not great. And so that's where, again, I can spend my expertise on figuring out what's not great, some, little tidies up with maybe some of the visual layout and visual polish. But just things like, we don't need like this arrow button and hours. You just need next, right? You just need a button that says next, and then you move on to the next phase. Maybe you need the arrow, maybe you don't. But I'm just saying there's a bunch of extra things in here that AI stuck. I'm just kind of like noting some of those. But now we get into this area here, and there's a bunch of things like this flag button. Why is the title down here getting squished? It just makes this thing being tucked off to the side, right? This checkbox button to submit this inspection, right? It just a whole bunch of things here just are more confusing than they need to be. And lastly, for some reason, AI just got the impression that oh my gosh, if there's damage, we just really need to have a big huge foghorn to say damage, 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 and that's really not what we want this user to be thinking, right? We don't want the YAR crew going, whoa, 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 like there's all this damage, and them getting intimidated by the screens, because again, red on UI typically means there's an error, like either you as a user have made an error or there's some kind of system error. It's just not good, right? It's immediately in a position of like, okay, something's wrong. It's really not anything wrong. You're just denoting yes damage or no damage. And I don't want there to be any kind of like fireworks going off that there's damage or anything like that. It's just a very simple thing these YAR crew people should be doing, and we want the UI to reflect that. So that's what all of these additional notes are for. So what I did then is captured all of this and then said, hey, based on my notes on the updated mobile design, revise it. and voila, now we've got a design that I think is competent for the mobile user. Again, we've got few hours of condition. We've eliminated a lot of the extra noise on these screens to just make them much easier to handle and understand. And we've got this, again, primary CTA button. We've got our 3 phases, and then if you want to denote damage, we've got a tiny little bit of red. Maybe even that is too much, and now we've got a checkbox instead of this flag button. So, within, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, I've got some decent looking mobile screens that I can now share with my team. I can explain some of the thinking, some of the process that I went through to get here, but I'm able to do this much, much more quickly, and now we might be able to ship, by the end of the day. Maybe that's, a little too hopeful, but you kind of get the idea where you can just move so much faster. This last one here is, just looking at, here are all my notes, Claude, from the previous set of screens over here. And now I am just feeding all of that context into Claude and saying, hey, why don't you take another swing at this design? And, for the first time here, this is like what I was thinking was more of an email inbox kind of approach. The second part, I wanted to put the user in a position where they're on one screen. So we're thinking now about the counter staff, and I'm just thinking from a training perspective, from a, because the previous design had the billing, and so that's the condition photos, and then the billing, now is in a tab. So now they can just click on one customer, see all of the pertinent information, and be able to finalize and send the receipt without ever having to go to another page. And I have found over time that, especially for users that are in like high turnover roles or doing this thing repetitively over and over again, that taking them into another workspace to just handle, let's say, the billing part, and then having to back out of that to go check out their list or see who's next. Right now we got it all conveniently located in one screen. So you can just click on this first one, see what the condition is, understand the status, the wait time and anything else that they need. And then when they're ready, flip over to billing and then, present that client with their final receipt. So the second part is 2 photos. Why not have the photos side by side, right? So this is what I also see being important, right? If they're taking photos every single time, then we can present the customer, could they potentially even turn their screen and show like, hey, when this checked out on June 3rd, no damage. And then when it checked out on June 8th, or checked back in, on June 8th, after you've had it, there's damage. Right now, in this case, there's no damage, there's no change or anything, but we could show the customer, hey, great, nothing was damaged on your return. We're ready to go and sign you out. Now, in this case, there's wanted to show an example of what it looks like when there is damage. So now we're in a much better position. The system is documented, the damage is documented, and now we can present the customer with, hey, when this was last here on, checked in on June 3rd, no damage. Now when you've returned it, there's damage, right? It's just a much more convincing argument and less stressful for both the customer and the front the front desk staff to handle this. And now you can go right into billing, and then retrieve or not return the parts of the deposit for the damage that might have been caused, right? So there were a few things I wanted to just clean up in regards to the layout. I just got a couple of notes here that I left for Claude. The tech comfort. There's some stuff I wanted to just tighten up with the layout, and so I gave it one last prompt to tighten those things up. So I wanted to remove the timestamp, remove the close today, the revenue. None of those things are important to the counter staff, and then convert the search input to search, sort, and filters. Just kind of basic stuff here. So it's not an awesome piece of UI. It's not a ton of visual polish here, but again, just puts me in a position as a designer. Now I've got some screens I'm really comfortable taking to my team saying, hey, I think we nailed the layout. I think we nailed the how it works. I think we nailed how to improve the revenue that's being lost currently in the system. So all the things that we were trying to measure against, right? So if we think back to what are we trying to improve, right? So we're trying to improve the close time, the inspection completion, the damage dispute win rate, all of these factors. I think we nailed those in these two designs, and that's the most important part. Now, the cleanup of this to make it actually look something awesome, the visual polish, that can come later. But getting the team to agree, yeah, for the most part, this is addressing all of the major business concerns. This layout is going to work, and now we can just continue going through the iteration process to tighten it up. So I want to give you some final thoughts. A lot of people are saying, hey, is AI going to replace the product designer? And the answer is emphatically no. But it could be an amazing force multiplier for ideation. What AI is not good at just yet, of course, is discernment, right? Judgment and taste. So I think discernment, judgment, and taste, those are things AI just cannot replace a human. But just like all these other tools we've had throughout time that can speed up the things that we really shouldn't be spending our time doing, which is like spending hours and hours and hours, days upon days on framing, right? So we can use AI to help make framing so much easier, right? Is this a perfect framing document? No, but does it get us 95% the way there? Then we can make tweaks to make it to improve upon it. Yeah, and that's, I think, where we want to be when we go through the iteration of these layouts, right? Like, again, not having to put in fake data, not having to just do a exercise of trying to figure out which format is the right one, and then using AI to take your notes, feed it back into AI, and then have it produce another round of mocks. This is a great way to work because it just speeds everything up. So those are some of my thoughts. I'd love to hear from you how you're using tools like Claude and Cursor. How close are you getting that to code? If you're starting to make changes to the design system, how does that get fed back into Figma, and all of those kind of things. So I'm going to keep doing explorations on enterprise software because I think it speaks well to my expertise and how the design process can be improved using these tools. So I'm going to sign off for now. I'd love to hear back from you on what you think, things that you're finding different, and we'll see you in the next one.